Welcome to Rally the Tartans, where ancient echoes rise with every throw, where clans gather, steel meets stone, and the past walks beside us. We're lifting culture, throwing tradition, and celebrating the warriors, the history, and the heart of the Highland Games. I'm your host, Michael Paul Wolfgar Lewis. Let's rally the Tartans. Welcome back to Rally the Tartans. Listen, guys, it sure has been a while. And for those of you that have been with us since season one, thank you so much for your patience. If you're just now joining us for the first time, it's great to meet you. And just know that this show is truly where we try to celebrate the athletes, the clans, the festivals, the traditions, and the people carrying Scottish culture forward every single day. Now, if you've been wondering where we've been, the honest truth is life happened. Over the last several months, there's been career changes, family commitments, of course, coaching responsibilities, new projects, and somewhere in the middle of all that, an entire studio move and rebuild. There were plenty of times that I looked at the actual mess in my house thinking, oh my God, look at these unfinished walls, the boxes, the equipment. And just thought to myself, I've got to figure out a way to get this show back on the air. Now, I didn't want to come back halfway. I wanted it to be better. I wanted it to be bolder. I wanted there to be better editing, better music, better cuts to the athletes. And we're not all the way there yet. But that is something that I have always told you that we are going to continue to work to get there. And I just did not want to miss another deadline. Because Rally the Tartans has always been about more than a podcast. It's about community. It's about preserving a culture that has survived wars, oceans, generations, and time itself. About the athletes stepping to the trig. It's about the clan standing proudly beneath their tartans at their tents. It's about the volunteers who work long hours, setting up the field before sunrise and tearing them down after sunset. It's about the actual families that make these festivals possible. And it's about making sure that these stories aren't lost. Now, the games didn't stop, the cultures didn't stop, the athletes sure didn't stop while we were rebuilding. And while this microphone was quiet, the Highland Games world certainly wasn't. Been quite a few records that have fallen. New athletes are emerging every weekend. Festivals are growing. Important conversations have started. And across North America and beyond, thousands of people have gathered once again to celebrate the traditions that we all care about. Today, we're actually going to take a look back at the first half of 2026 and talk about some of those biggest stories and developments in the games. We're going to discuss the upcoming Scottish Athletics International Masters World Championship in the Netherlands and hopefully share some exciting news about a project that's very close to my heart, which is the possible launch of the Ohio Valley Scottish Heritage Foundation. Because the Highland Games may have brought us together, but preserving Scottish culture requires more than a single weekend festival. It requires people willing to build something that lasts, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And that's what season 2 is going to be about. Not just where we've been, not where we are today, but where we're going. So whether you're listening from driving to work, training in the gym, traveling to your next games, sitting under a clan tent, or maybe planning your first trip to a Scottish festival, thank you for being here. Welcome back to Rally the Tartans, and let's just jump right into the deep end. I will definitely throw myself under the bus for that slow transition from season 1 to season 2. Definitely had the bright idea of moving into my very own studio in my house. We moved into a new house, was going to set it up, and then bam, had some plumbing issues, and there was a major water leak in that studio. Electronics and water just does not go together. That was the main reason that kind of set us back. And then coaching. Coaching has had a big impact on me this year. I've had more athletes than the program has ever had in one season. When I first started coaching our track and field throws team, we had 8. This year we had 24 athletes training from freshman to senior. Later today, you'll actually hear from one of my former throwers that came back and competed in his first Highland Games. So that's kept us busy. Our goal this year was to send 4 athletes to state. We've sent 2. So we're halfway there. That is literally some of the biggest parts of why we went dark, just moving into a new place. I have switched, I'm still in the same field. I've switched companies and now working for a new insurance agent. I am now an independent agent. I used to be a captive with State Farm. So if you guys did not know that, that is actually kind of, a big deal for me and in that business world. I just figured June 1st was halfway through the year. We needed to get back on track, and whether everything was right or not, go for it. Get it started. Same reason why we started last August is because if we didn't have a start date, we were going to keep kicking the can down the road until it was perfect. And a good friend of mine sent me a message or a message on one of the videos I posted saying, hey, it doesn't have to be perfect. Just get it out there. As you can see, I'm still not in the studio. I'm in my temporary little corner here to bring you guys this season 2. Season 2, we are going to be getting out more and more. You will see later on in the episode that we actually have some video from athletic directors. Again, I want this to be more than just my face. I am not the face of the Highland Games. I just love talking about it and making sure that we can promote it and we can get information out there to everybody and make sure that they have a reason to get up and go. And that's what season 2 is going to be about. Season 2 is going to run until we talk about the Holiday Highlander and Clan Kringle for the December games that they will have. And then we will take December off and we will launch season 3, hopefully live at the Central Florida Highland Games, where I intend to step on the field once again as an athlete coming back from a pretty nasty injury. But you know what? I don't care how I do. I just have to get back on the field myself. So that's going to be pretty important to me. I hope to see you all out there. I would love to do a live with everybody that listens to the show there at Central Florida. I do not know who the host clan is this year. Can't wait to find out and make sure that we kind of set that up to everybody meet up down there. Now, something I said earlier, obviously, is the games didn't stop. The culture didn't stop. The athletes haven't stopped. We're rebuilding this. We're rebuilding the studio. We still have plans to get it on the road, whether it's a minibus or a school bus or an RV. I'm not sure exactly how to do that. I actually have a sound producer now, works with audio. He's been helping me with some things. I completely bombed the interview process with our guest coming up. I'm using a new program instead of Zoom where I could never get the video right. Now I just got to work on the audio and get that right. So we started season 1 with bad audio on the guest. We'll start season 2 with bad audio, at least on my end. And then we're going to get that fixed because right now we've got a good slate of guests coming up. Today you're going to hear from Mason Stroud, a novice, a newcomer to the Highland Games. We got Clay Buchanan coming up from Clan Buchanan throwing team on the 15th. After that, we're going to jump across the pond and have our very first Scottish athletics with a twist individual on from Scotland. You guys know I'm a football coach as well. He is a defensive coordinator for the Clyde Valley Blackhawks for an American football team out of Scotland. So we're going to talk about how we hold up Scottish traditions and we throw for that and the cultural part of that and how America has affected sports in Scotland. So it's going to be a great season 2 for us. I am still sending out invites for the rest of the season. Please, if you haven't got one yet, do not worry. I'm sure one will be coming to you shortly. So let me just kind of talk about something else that's real big as we do this recap, because we've had a great breakdown. Obviously, down in the South, in Florida, their season starts in January. in the Midwest where I am, Indiana, Kentucky. I'm kind of on the borderline of Indiana and Kentucky at the moment. We really don't start till May. Uh, Midwest kind of starts in May. You get more to the southeast, or excuse me, the southwest, like your Texas and stuff like that. It starts earlier. Arizona starts earlier. Out west normally starts a little bit earlier, just depending if you're northwest or southwest. So there's a lot of opportunities there for games all across the country, especially if you're willing to travel. But something that I gotta bring up, guys and girls, when I say that, of course, is what in the heck is going on with our mark system? And what I mean by that is our records. When we hit our records, okay. Everybody here, well, not everybody. I guess newcomers like Mason. When I talk to him later today, he's not really a NASGA guy. I brought up NASGA. I was like, hey, are your scores going to be put in NASGA? He's like, well, no, what's that? Welcome to 2026, guys. Now I'm new. I'm new to the sport. I'm 5 years, less than 5 years in, right? Almost at 5 years in, I guess. Uh, no, not even. I'm 2022. Yeah, so I'm not even 5 years in. But I came in on that back end of NASCA when it was starting to crash and people started creating other things. I found a website called Cabermetrics. I have recently, in the last couple months, seen that that's been down and not working, even though I haven't been able to put out a podcast. That's scary. Heavy Athlete is one that you've heard me talk about before if you're familiar with the systems here. And I loved Heavy Athlete. It was very user friendly. And no shade to Al in the rankings for amateur. I love that guy. Threw with him in the Celtic Strong Throwing Club down in Tampa. I believe he's the first person to ever let me borrow his sheaf fork so I could toss in my first games. I just don't see him throwing a Braemar stone 250 feet. Uh, Al, if you're listening and you threw at 250 feet, please let me know what TRT you're on because you were a lot shorter than me, and that's amazing. Probably 25, 27, or maybe 30 feet is probably what you could probably see him throw. So he is not necessarily number one, although on heavyathlete.com it shows him at number one. So I have moved over to a couple different scoring systems. Although I love Heavy Athlete, I'm kind of bouncing between highlandathlete.com right now. And there's another Scottish scores website. And then the Rebel himself, Danny Webster, he's fixing the games a little at a time. Uh, he's working on a score system too. And let's see, what was it called? Yeah, here. NASCA Scores. NASCAScores.com is his, and he's going to be opening that bad boy up. So, trying to talk to all of these athletes, all of these ADs, trying to figure out a game plan. Guys, we really got to get behind one of these folks and put some fundraising in for them. Make sure that they have what they need, not just buying the domain. I own a company as well, a holster company, API patch ins, all kinds of things like that. Hell, I'm probably not even saying it right, but there's a lot that goes on the back end. And NASCA was great. I can't tell you how many hours I've probably spent on that message board just tearing through information, looking at some old guy's workout record on how he works out, what he lifts, when he lifts, how much downtime, what the rest looks like, what the hell he's eating, what these athletes are doing to become better. Um, Whoever, and Danny knows I respect him a lot. Danny or Scottish Scores or Highland Athlete, let's figure it out. Somebody reach out to me. Let me know how we can help. Well, we got to become a yearly sponsor. What I would like to know is what is the plan after you're gone? I have a plan for this podcast after I'm gone. There's a short list of very young folks that I will be passing this off to. Again, I don't want to be the face of this. I just want to help facilitate the promotion of Highland Games and Highland festivals and athletes. So I am not just Highland athlete specific. Of course, I want to talk to you about what an amazing badass John Van Buren or Graham Hathorne is. Those two guys right there. I flip a coin. That's probably who's going to be the top pro men's athlete for 2026. Those guys are great. No shade to anybody else that's not those two guys. There's some fantastic throwers out there that have amazing technique and are just killing it in the gym and putting it on. But I want to know, how this is going to continue to grow after we're gone. Are we going to have to go to 17 different pages to get information? Is there something that's going to backdate and grab all those NASCA scores? Danny seems like he might have the idea there. NASCA scores. Seems like he's just trying to carry on that tradition. I believe he said something open sourced to me recently, man. So whatever we have to do as a community, let's pick one and let's fund it. Let's promote it. Let's talk about it. Let's make sure that there's always somebody that's going to be there to update that. I really would like my great grandchildren to use the same damn page. Not that I'm some fantastic thrower or I'm going to be some world pro or anything like that, but I would like, if I'm not around, my great grandkids can go, hey, we're going to go throw at this games this weekend. Right now, it's going to be what, the 47th, 48th Central Florida Games or something like that. Maybe I have the wrong number, but by the time it's the 70th Central Florida Highland Games, I want them to go back and look at my scores from when I did it on the 45th or whatever it was when I did it. Like, I want us to be able to do this for generations. I want this podcast to grow for the next few generations and for somebody to always take part in what we got going on there. So, real quick shout out. I've already said John Van Buren, Graham Hathorne. I think Graham Hathorne's in the Navy or something like that. I watched a podcast. Here, I'm going to mess it up again. It was probably either Going Rogue or um, none. That's a blank on me. I'm so sorry, guys. One of those other fantastic Highland Games podcasts that are throwers that talk to other throwers and they get really nerdy on all that stuff. I love it. But listen, we've had a fantastic 2026 so far. There's some neck and neck between those guys and the pros. We have some pro women that are just killing it out there. Alicia and Hannah are, back and forth for first place in their pro women division. You can look at almost anything out there and see some very competitive stats. Just a quick shout out to again Danny Webster, who I've already talked about. Good Lord, I gotta start talking smack about him every once in a while. He's gonna think I got a crush on him. Jesus. Uh, ADing and still being in the top 5 of the country for men's masters. I believe he's going to Worlds over in the Netherlands, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. There's a Derek Gleason. He's doing just absolutely fantastic. He's got one right now, but again, these numbers are super close. We're talking about less than 30 points that separate 1 and 2, and roughly 40 points that separate the top 3. So let's look at that. So many folks that have a great shot in the Masters, men. I know as I sit on a springboard for the Scottish International Masters there, that they have some issues getting in contact with folks. And that is just not a good situation, guys. There was a post about it today. I had tried to get it out to as many folks as I could. I know Clan Campbell is a clan that I work with and represent, and I had made sure to get out to them looking for Colin Campbell. Guys, if you're a part of these clan tents, these clan societies, these Highland Games, and you see the Scottish international invites going out and people are not responding, try to find them on whatever social media you may be on, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Heck, I don't can't even list all of them these days. Make sure that you're trying to get that information out. I would hate to see somebody miss an opportunity to throw at Worlds. I know it's not going to be super convenient because it's not going to be in Florida, a destination trip like it normally is when it's held over here. The Netherlands sounds like a really fun time, right? Go over there, go do some world traveling, throw heavy things, have a fantastic time doing that, and see exactly uh, what it takes to be a world champion. Like that's fantastic, right? So I'm going to get off my soapbox again, just talking about some of the games that have happened over the last 6 months. Of course, everybody knows my favorite game. Well, top two favorite games. They all happen in Florida, so I guess I shouldn't brag too much. The Central Florida Highland Games is one of the very first of the year. It's down north of Orlando. It is not in Orlando. It is north of Orlando. So just make sure that you guys are keeping these stats and updating those. That had just a slew of athletes. One of the bigger shows, to be honest with you, the biggest one that I've been to so far. Dunedin being second. So just that those were fantastic. Again, as far as some of the other games that have happened, we've already had Smoky Mountain uh, down in Tennessee happen. I mean, what a cooler place to throw down there. Ladies of the Keys. Sorry, let's stay on January. Central Florida, Suncoast Scots, Lady of the Keys, all kind of took off in January. February, you're smacking right, back down there in Florida. Tennessee started popping up. They had a backyarder games down there. Tallahassee, Mount Dora, just some really fun times. Southern California popped off in for Scots Irish games. Northeast Florida. Again, these are all things that you should be putting on your 2027 I want to go see list, and make sure that you step out and get some good time. Expand that season. Stop waiting until May to start your season. Start it in January. Pick off a couple, at least one in Florida. January, February, March. Pick off one in Florida, and then move on from there. Danny kicked it off in, I believe he kicked it off in March. I think he might have did one of the Florida games, but I know his North Alabama. He did one down there in Decatur, which that's definitely in his backyard. And again, we've had some incredible throwers. Now, next episode 2, season 2, episode 2, uh, we'll have Clay on, but I should have everything set up for the new room. So where the new room is going to have opportunities for me to showcase the video on this page right here. Now, there's going to be 2 opportunities for the platform: audio only on Spotify, video on Spotify, and then YouTube. So we're actually going to highlight those actual throwers, the throws they made, and then we're going to kind of do a little breakdown of those throws because I just love to do that kind of stuff. So that's something to keep in mind. So I know this was a recap section here, and we kind of went over, but that's okay. This is getting back into the groove of doing everything and making sure the show is moving on. So one second here. Let's take just a moment for shout out one more time to SAI Masters World Championship. They have sent out third round of invites, and that is super important for you guys to reach back out to them. If you feel like you've deserved an invite and haven't got one, reach out. They might not have your correct email. All right. So again, we're going to talk about a few things here just later in our cultural spot, but we're going to jump right into my guest, Mason Stroud. What a great kid this guy is. He is one of my former throwers at Floyd Central. Our mascot was the Highlanders, so it was a very easy conversation for me to kind of switch from one to the other. And we'll get right into that interview right now. For this episode of Rally the Tartans, we're talking about the future of the Highland Games. Not just preserving tradition, but building what comes next. Our guest is Mason Stroud. He's a former Floyd Central thrower, current engineering student at the University of Cincinnati, and now officially a Highland Games athlete after competing in his very first Highland Games at the Blue River Highland Games in Shelbyville, Indiana. We'll talk about what it's like stepping from the shot put ring into the world of cabers, stones, and hammers, why Highland Games are attracting athletes from the modern track and field world, and how Mason hopes to launch the first Highland Games club at University of Cincinnati. This is exactly the kind of bridge between tradition and the next generation that keeps the culture alive. Mason, welcome to Rally the Tartans.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to share. So I'm glad to be here.
Well, listen, I know a little bit about you, having known you for a few years now. So for everybody out there listening, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Alrighty, so I'm somewhat of a big dude. I'm 6'3", 250. I'm 1 year into college, and in high school I played soccer, and I was on the track and field throwing team at Floyd Central. Perfect.
And that's actually where I got to meet you at, was during that throwing team the last couple years there. So it was great to get to meet you. And let's talk about that in a little bit more depth. When did throwing become a big part of your life?
So I started throwing in middle school. I had a buddy named Noah, shout out Noah, who was a close friend of mine since elementary school, and he was on the track team. And it started slow as like I guess I'll join the track team as an avenue to hang out with my friend, and then I was the fat kid, and so naturally I wasn't getting to compete in any running events, and they were like, we're just going to stick you down here and have you throw, because I was the biggest kid on the team. And so immediately went in there and was the best shot putter and the best discus thrower they had. We didn't have a coach, so just out of pure muscling it forward, I got it there. And then from there it evolved, and I slowly went to different coaches over each year, got a little bit better up until graduation.
Awesome. And what events did you specialize in high school?
I think I ended up being best at shot put, but throughout my years in high school I tried a few different things. In club I tried some hammer, but I did both shot put and discus. I think I ended up being a little bit better in shot put than I was in discus.
Okay, all right. And so was just the culture of throwing in middle school and high school in the program kind of what made you want to do it more after, high school, or?
That's an interesting question, because I feel like the culture that we had in high school and even in middle school was ever changing. I don't think any 1 year was the same as a previous. Every single year I either had no coach or a new coach. I never had one coach for more than 1 year. Obviously, you took the reins there in my senior year, and you were still there this past year. But every single year was vastly different. Some years were better than others. I would say my last year, whenever you started, and the team kind of felt more like a team rather than more of a individual, I'm just here for myself. The team culture really grew, and I think that in what would be considered an individual sport really did encourage me to go further with it.
Awesome, man. Awesome. And listen, I was excited to be around, so thanks for that. I'll be there as long as they'll have me. But moving on from that, because it sounds like you were very self-driven and you were pushing your own envelope there to get better. Who were some of the teammates or some of just the people around that helped shape you as an athlete growing up?
So a big initial push was one of my dad's friends from high school named Terry. And Terry threw discus in high school, went all the way one state way back in the day, and he gave me my first discus that I had in order to practice with. Did a lot of my initial coaching, And so I owe a lot to the initial sticking with it to him. And then past that, I would say I had various teammates through the years that I think kind of pushed me to be a better version of myself. I mean, early on in middle school, it was a gentleman by the name of Sebastian. You know, it was me and him for shot put, pushing each other and pushing each other. He didn't end up throwing in high school. But when I got to high school, Brock Conrad transferred in, who ended up going to UK and is an amazing thrower. But like being next to him, it was constantly, oh, you need to push yourself further. You need to push yourself to be better. And getting to throw next to him encouraged me to try and bump my own numbers up. He helped me with a lot of stuff early on. And then, like I said, every year there was a different coach, different techniques, different things that I was taught. I think by the time I got toward the latter half of my high school career, honestly, and he didn't pay me to say this, you were the one who I feel like really helped the most in terms of prepping myself for meets and how to be the best thrower I can be.
I appreciate that. Totally unexpected. I've heard the Terry story before, so I really thought that's where we were going to go with. So that's awesome, man. I'm glad I was able to kind of help you there towards the end, and definitely I'm glad I got you to finally come out to the Highland Games. That was a big part of me wanting to be in the throws program, was, direct some kids to come over and have fun in a kilt. But let's talk about something else, just because obviously you're a real smart dude. You're now studying engineering at UC. How difficult has it been balancing athletics in a demanding academic path that you're on?
I will say my sleep schedule has suffered. I think overall, I've tried to keep with as much as I can while on campus. Being in Cincinnati and being in the city, it's been really difficult to try and find areas in which I can openly do athletics. But I have managed to play a lot of pickup soccer. I've done some rec soccer. I've done intramural volleyball and played some pickup basketball here and there. I will say, as far as throwing, it's been very difficult to get access to an area in which I can throw. But in terms of the academic workload, I've been 18 credit hours both semesters I've been in so far, and set up for an 18 credit hour in the fall. Trying to get in as much schooling as I can, but I think it's a balance that I can make happen.
That's fantastic, man. I can't wait to see how it goes. Both of those careers, your athletic and your academic. So let's talk more about your academic. Do you think engineering and throwing have any similarities to it with what you're learning and what you're trying to do on the field?
Absolutely. I took my physics course this past year that, I got in there and we started getting into some torque and some rotational motion and, talking about the pulls and pushes of everything. And then, when we got into that unit, I had friends that were struggling everything, and I've heard these terms, since again middle school, trying to learn how to throw. And there's a lot of being able to understand different speeds and forces and where your power is being generated from, that I think is a direct translation from engineering and physics into throwing.
Okay. So, and let's kind of ask the history part here, just discover a little bit more of how this involved into you being a thrower and going into the Highland Games. When did you first hear about the Highland Games? Because I know it was before me.
Yeah, so when I went into my freshman year at Floyd Central, and obviously Floyd Central's mascot is the Highlander, my grandmother for Christmas of my 8th grade year, right before I was going into high school, she bought me a kilt, and she bought me a green and gold kilt pattern so that I would have something to wear to Floyd Central basketball and Floyd Central football games. And she knew I was throwing, and she kind of brought up the idea of like Highland Games and said I'd look like a true Highlander. And I was getting big by that point, and thinking like she was like, oh, I'd blend right in at something like that. So she kind of brought up the idea to me. And then as far as actually getting involved again, senior year, you going in as that coach, and you kind of brought me into the realm of, I already knew about it, but you brought me into the being able to actually do it.
All right. No, she was spot on with that. You fit well. But let me ask you this: before competing, what did you think the Highland Games were, and has that changed now that you competed?
Um, I thought that Highland Games were going to be a lot more similar to throwing shot put and discus at high school. I thought it was going to be like just you're there, you're an athlete, you're just trying to beat your marks every single time, and that's it. You're trying. It's a test of your skill. And I think since having done it, there's a lot of truth in that. But I think my view has kind of evolved a little to it's not just a test of your own skill. It is a show. It is an event. It is something not just for the athlete, but something for an audience. In high school, I would think back, and every single meet I was at, if I was throwing, the only people who were gathered around watching the throwing happen was the family of the throwers themselves. Having been to now at the time of recording 2 Highland Games, both times seeing an actual audience of people there invested in wanting to see what happens, wanting to see these great feats of strength. I think it's more than just the doing it for yourself. You're doing it for yourself and others.
That is exactly right. And I'm going to tell you, you've been to 2 small ones. Wait
Yeah.
until I take you to Florida in January, and there's 1,000 people standing around. it's a little bit different. But so what actually finally convinced you to actually step onto the field and compete? I know I had invited you out all last year after you graduated, but this seemed to be the year. What was that final shove off the ledge?
Um, to be honest with you, I think I missed throwing. Year at college, and again, I was able to play all kinds of pickup soccer and everything. Like, I was able to scratch all the itches I had except for throwing, and it was something that, my brother still being on the team in high school, hearing how he's doing and everything, and I was like, man, I really miss this. And, I go to a D1 school, and I was an all right thrower, but I was not good enough in high school to be on UC's throwing team. But in terms of getting to keep throwing, I felt like this could be an avenue, and then started practicing for it, started training for it, and I was like, all right, I think this is something I might be able to do. This is something I think I might be able to succeed in. And loved it.
And shout out to the lineage of throwers in your family, because your little brother as a sophomore actually made varsity. So good for him. And we have some good male throwers at the school. So maybe we'll get him out there sooner or later, right?
I hope so. I'm real proud of him and how far he's come in terms of the strength and whatnot he's done both with football and throwing. So I'm
Yeah.
hoping he'll get into it.
Yeah, I hope so too. Now, let me ask you this: just coming from the high school level, was there any intimidation factor coming from the high school or the Olympic style throwing into a totally different environment?
Um, I would say yeah. There was a little bit of a couple events in specific that felt like it was going to be a whole new world of what's going on. Like, I would say, namely sheaf toss. Having to learn a whole new style of throw. Not a ton translated in terms of my overall footwork, but then in terms of the overall event itself, it was much bigger. And then I went from being normally one of the biggest couple guys at each event into, yeah, I'm just kind of average sized, and maybe even a little on the smaller end compared to a lot of these throwers at the Highland Games, which is impressive to me. It truly is a culmination of some of the greatest strong men and women out there. And while I do enjoy it a lot, there was definitely some intimidation at first of like oh no, am I somewhere I don't belong? You know.
Right, right. So what surprised you most about your first Highland Games? Well, your first two, I guess we'll say now.
Honestly, the culture of the competitors. I think, when I went in there to that first games, and every single event we go up to, and granted I was in that novice class in that first one, and so there were a lot of guys that were really new to the sport, but everybody there was, in everything they said, was trying to help each other out. There wasn't any great competition between each competitor that was like, I need you to fail for the sake of my success. Everybody wanted the best out of everybody. There was helping, coaching every little thing that they'd picked up on, and trying to make sure that everybody had the best games they possibly could. And I'll say the second games I competed in this past weekend, in the Southern Kentucky games, they didn't have classes. It was a men's open. And so I was throwing with some truly impressive throwers in that games, and a couple of the guys who have been doing this close to a decade now that were throwing next to me, putting my throws to shame. But still, in every single throw that I was doing, it was coaching and points and everything, even to the point of letting me borrow equipment, teaching me small tips and tricks, even after the games had ended, trying to make me the best possible thrower I could be.
That's one of my favorite things about the games and the community, just everybody out there. I'm nowhere near the person that should be a spokesman for the Highland Games, and people have been sending me messages. When's the next episode coming out? So I get it, man. It definitely has a camaraderie draw to it. But let's ask you this outside of that, and that might be one of the reasons, but event-wise, what event hooked you immediately? Was it you dominating stones? Was it heavy hammer? Was it the SOB, that is the weight over bar? Is it trying to toss a caber? What exactly hooked you in the events?
I would say it'd have to be one of two things. I think hammer is just so fun to do. You get out there and you're swinging it around, and I feel strong in the moment. And it's it feels almost like a natural movement that's like, oh my goodness, this makes me feel powerful. But then, that moment in that first games where, again, and I acknowledge I was with the C class, and everybody's kind of new to the games, but I took first place in Braemar stone and open stone, going from a lot of that shot put background into that Highland Games moment with those stones. And the Braemar stone was a close one, but I kind of pulled away with a considerable lead in that open stone, and it felt good to be like, I'm dominating, felt really good.
So which one of those events was way harder than you expected?
Of those two, hammer.
All of them.
Okay. Of everything, honestly, especially after the second games, I would say the caber, because the caber I feel like is the hardest to prepare for, because every single games is going to have a different caber. It's going to be, a different length, a different weight, a different diameter. It's so hard to prepare for that. You genuinely have to be talented enough to work with everything. All of your stones are going to be roughly the same weight. Your hammers are going to be the same weight. Your wob is going to be the same weight. That caber it's a new beast every time you go to attack it. And I got a turn in my first games, and then come my second games, I didn't get a turn. And that was a little disappointing in the moment, but it just tells me that I've got more to practice with caber. I've got more work to do going forward. And it's a challenge, but I hope soon I get to a point where, no caber's too daunting.
Right, exactly, and I think that's every thrower out there. Let's kind of dial in a little bit more. Let's pick on my friends up at Blue River Highland Games and kind of go over that experience. Novices out there in Indiana, you might want to listen up. This is one of our first games of the season in Indiana. It's a great location. It's a fantastic venue. But let's talk to you, Mason, about your experience with that atmosphere, what it was like at the Blue River Highland Games for a first-time athlete stepping onto the field.
Honestly, I would say the atmosphere was almost comparable to that of like a Ren Fair. Like, getting in there and there being shows, there being like booths and stuff. Like, this was a community event. This wasn't just like some track meet, This was like a huge thing in terms of the community coming and watching throwing. I think that when I got out there again, and I mentioned this earlier, I was a little intimidated at first, but I get out and I see that open field, and it was almost like a sea of opportunity. Like, I caber first thing in the morning while it was pouring down some rain on us, and I was a little terrified during that, but we got done with that event, and I was like, okay, this isn't going to be bad. This is going to be fun. And every single event, I was just looking forward to getting to that next one, thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to do? Your first games, everything's a PR. So I was just thinking, how can I set a bar for myself going forward? How can I genuinely gauge how good of an athlete I am so that I can hurry up and I can beat these as soon as possible?
Okay. Well, what stood out to you most about the Highland Games community? Was there a moment that was like, oh, okay, I get why people fall in love with this?
I would say that it was honestly the AD and the judges at that games were very, very helpful in terms of I would get out there and I would throw, and then immediately afterward, I get kind of pulled to the side by either them or some of the athletes, and they'd be like, hey, I noticed this, or I would have them film me, and then they'd show me at the end and be like, all right, this is what you're doing here, this is a way to help improve that. And again, that sense of camaraderie of everybody here wants you to be the absolute best that you can be. It really is encouraging, and it really makes me want to come back and do as much as I can.
That's exactly right. That's how I felt as well. Now we've kind of already talked about you coming from a traditional track and field background and how the culture of a Highland Games is different. But did anything surprise you about the spectators or the crowd interaction during your events?
Honestly, the traveling crowd. I think moving from event to event around the field, having people get up and follow you, and being you're the reason why they are here, versus again and I know going back to that high school track and field background, and there's only a couple throwing events there, but it felt like most of the audience was there hanging out at the track. It's very few people. I used the phrase a lot in high school that throwing was like the redheaded stepchildren of the track team. And it's just not the case here with the Highland Games. Everybody there they're moving around they pick a group or they pick an event, and they're watching that event or that group, and they're moving around throughout the day. They're truly invested in how these athletes are going to perform. And I would say specifically in the second games, Carrie Overfelt did an absolutely fantastic job on the mic and being the announcer, but he would draw heavy attention to specifically when our group got to the caber toss and we were across the field and it wasn't easy for an audience to get to. He was letting them know what was going on, and then it was really causing people to pay attention, because at the end of the day, of the 10 of us that were in that group, only 2 of us got a turn, and only 1 of us got it turned more than once of their 3 attempts. And so it was, everybody was deeply invested in how it was going to go, because there were a lot of times it was close, edge of the seat type performances.
Yeah, exactly. And now, how different is that for you, whether you're in track and field and you're just throwing for distance versus throwing for a spectacle and tradition? There's so much going on during your Highland Games throw.
Yeah, honestly, I think it kind of combines my favorite parts of both sports I played in high school. Playing soccer, you're playing for an audience there. People are invested in every single element of it, and I love having that for the Highland Games. But I also like the reliance on my own ability and how I'm going to do, and that there's an element of I can look back on it and trace everything down, that if something does go wrong, it is my fault. How can I fix it going forward? There's an element of self-responsibility for every single throw. I can be proud of every single success, knowing that I was fully responsible for that success. And there's a sense of personal tie to every single thing that goes on.
So what one event, and I'm sure I know the answer to this, where you felt like your track background just really gave you an advantage? And then on the other end of that, what was the one event where you just realized, holy smokes, I got a lot more to learn here?
I would say for the best advantage, honestly, I would put it at Braemar Stone, with close second being the open stone. And the reason I think I put Braemar over open is I knew how to spin in high school, but I wasn't the best at it. I felt like I could always just power throw further than I could spin, and so I got really good at a power throw. And even with the increased weight, it was borderline the exact same motion getting into that Braemar stone, and I felt like that's honestly why I did so well with it. I knew how I needed to hold it, I knew how I needed to release it, and everything. And open stone, while it's closer to a shot put size and weight, having that ability to move within that box, I think is something that I'm going to need to start taking advantage of real soon. I've gotten some decent numbers with it, and I've even gotten a little stronger than I was in high school. I'm pushing that 16-pound rock almost as far as I was pushing that 12. But I know I can get more out of it if I can generate some momentum in those throws. So that's the only reason I think I put the open below the Braemar in terms of my background and how I was going into it. As far as, what's kind of been kicking my butt and what I know I need to work more in, I would say initially my thought was sheath toss. It was just such a foreign concept to me. I went out really early on my first games on sheath toss, and I know I could have done better. In fact, second games I was at, they started the height 4 feet clear of where I went out at on the previous games, and I cleared it first try. I went out, and between the first games and second games I competed in, I put in a little work in sheath toss specifically. I really wanted to do better in that. Now, flip side of that, the one I know needs more work going forward is that wob. That wob, man, it's insane. That thing throws me, and I'm trying. I really am, and I'm. It's a little disappointing to say out loud, because I've gone out, I've hit 9 feet, but I haven't broken 10, and both times I've gone for 10, put it on a t-shirt. I had the height, and I just didn't have it over the bar. And I know I can break 10, and then I feel like with a little bit of work, a little bit more practice with it, I can get up a couple feet higher than that.
Already speaking like a veteran. Put it on a t-shirt. Well, listen, man, there's something I've really been wanting to talk to you about, especially since you first brought it up. It's been brewing in my mind. It's something that just really piques my interest because, my goal is to one day get this sport back on ESPN and to make this grow. You've talked about possibly creating the first Highland Games club at the University of Cincinnati. Where in the heck did that idea come from?
To be honest with you, after having done this a couple times now, and after having trained even before that, and I was like, with being away so far from home, I wanted to find a way to continue to pursue Highland Games, and I got to thinking, I started this sport relatively late. I've done a couple practices over the past 2 years, but prior to that I had never touched a Highland Games implement. And I was thinking along the lines of, if I've gotten to this so recently and I love it as much as I do, how many other kids, or I guess young adults rather, at my age would feel the same? And what better opportunity to introduce Highland Games to people than a college campus? I think if I'm at the University of Cincinnati, which is a relatively big campus, I think that if I can bring it to the people, I can generate some interest, and I can get my generation more involved in the Highland Games early on, and try and move this sport into some great levels of accomplishment.
Now, I know we have junior classes, kids under 18 that can compete and things like that, but do you think there's a reason that colleges don't currently have a Highland Games club? I've done a few Google searches. I haven't found anything.
I put in quite a bit of research into this to try and figure out how it would need to be structured. There are I found 4 colleges in the United States that have some sort of Highland Games or Highland Games adjacent type program, and most of them are Scottish culture clubs that will occasionally host a Highland Games. And so even then, they don't have one for athletes themselves. And even throughout that, most of those schools are D3 schools, low profile schools, definitely nothing D1 like Cincinnati. And I think the reason for this is just a general lack of awareness of almost its existence and its popularity. I think a lot of people are unaware of what the sport is and how manageable it is to get going. Like it's not like you need a football stadium and schools just don't have the money for a football stadium. You know, people have the resources, but there's not enough interest, which again I chalk up to I don't think enough people know about it, and then B, there's not like the money already going through it, like the tradition of it. And I know you talk tradition on here a lot, and in terms of being in the USA, it's hard to find a big college that's not going to have a football team because football's been so ingrained in our culture. And I think Highland Games does have a place in our culture, and it's just not been realized yet.
So you think a Highland Games club is just going to fit naturally into your college club sports culture already?
I think so. And I've talked to a few people that I know, not just in my year, but in some of the years above me at University of Cincinnati, and tried to talk to a few people that I think would have some interest. And in fact, just a couple days ago, I texted a buddy of mine who's getting ready to go into his fourth year, and he's an engineer and at University of Cincinnati. We're a 5-year engineering program, so he's got 2 years left on him at UC, and he's in the UC bodybuilding club. And I made an Instagram post highlighting some of my throws and my first couple Highland Games. And I texted him to ask if he had interest, and he said he was planning on texting me in the next day or two, asking how he can get involved himself, because he loved it so much, like looking at what I was doing, and he wanted to find a way to get involved. A separate friend of mine, when I was getting ready to go to that first one at Blue River, I shot him a text and, said, hey, do you want to go do this with me? And my buddy Michael, he was like, yeah, man, this looks awesome. He had no prior practice with any of it. His first time touching an implement was in that games, and he went out there and he loved it. He killed it, honestly, especially for having never done anything with it before. I feel like he did a great job. He told me afterward he's excited to get to do another one, and he's been honestly pushing almost as hard as I have to try and get this club created.
That's fantastic, man. That makes me feel all warm and fuzzy, just because I feel like I helped plant some seeds in you, and it's grown in you, and now you're planting seeds in other people, and that's how this grows. So let me ask you this: what would a University of Cincinnati Highland Games club actually look like? Are you thinking practices, travel to games, other colleges? Are you out there recruiting throwers like you're already kind of doing? Is there, a cultural education portion to it as well? So the institution backs it.
Yeah. So again, I've been trying to put a lot of research into seeing how this could be obtainable, and as of right now, I have to wait until the beginning of the fall term because there's a club registration period that we're not currently in right now. So I have to wait until it's about mid-August whenever I can officially file for it to become a club. And I've been looking at everything that needs to happen with it and trying to model certain things and draw it up, like trying to model it after a couple other clubs that I've seen and how they function. And in my mind, I would think, because there's not a great place on campus to actually throw, we would have to go somewhere slightly off campus. I would think we would actually go and throw or practice either every other week or every week, depending on the day and availability. I think recruitment-wise, that's going to be a heavy component of it. I'd like to see, again, I've talked to a few people in the bodybuilding club, and I'd like to see a lot of these really, really strong individuals come and try it out. But I'd like to branch into everything. Everybody I've talked to so far has been guys that I know. I'd like to see some women interested. I'd like to see eventually, and I know this is putting the cart before the horse almost, but eventually I'd like for it to get big enough that we have enough people involved, not just athletes, but also somebody who can run it as an AD, somebody who can, people who can be judges, I'd love to have people who can play the bagpipes. I'd love to have enough people that we could host our own Highland Games and have this going to have this opportunity. And then hopefully with that, I'd like to spread some seeds into other universities in the area and see if they can get it going, and then maybe try and have like a joint Highland Games amongst universities, and bring a collegiate aspect of it to the Highland Games. I think in terms of trying to get people involved, I think heavy on recruitment in year one, and then heavy on the cultural significance of it as well. Why do we do this? What is the history of this? What does it show? What does it mean to be a Highland Games athlete? And how to perpetuate the culture that's already established, and keeping it great as it is.
All right. Well, if somebody's listening right now out there and they wanted to help you build that vision, what would you tell them right now?
We need all the help we can get. I think we're still very early stages, but any form of encouragement with it, whether it be I need to get implements, so stuff like that, versus if I could have people that are willing to come help coach, maybe lead a clinic, maybe if somebody knows of some good games for some really new throwers in the Cincinnati area or not too far away, that I can look at and be like, this is a great one for some of these newbies to go and try out, and be like, this is how you fall in love with the games. Let me send you to this games right here. That way they can really try and get invested. I would say potentially a sponsorship if somebody has the resources to do so. I think that could be huge in terms of getting us a space to practice, getting us the stuff we need, and potentially even helping register people for some games. And it's truly all about just getting people out there and competing as much as possible.
I love to hear that, and I will offer up the first donation. The baby caber that I have is a little 13-foot caber. It's really just for practice. It's great for juniors, and it's great for first-timers to just kind of understand it. If you guys have a place to store it, I will gladly send it back with you next semester for the club.
I really appreciate that, especially given that the caber, I feel like, might be one of the harder things to come by in terms of something good to practice with for the new guys.
Well, fortunately, here where we live, there's tons of trees. I will find some more, and I will get you guys a men's A caber as quickly as possible. And once you get some more females involved, I'll go ahead and make sure that you guys never run out of cabers. I'll even bring them up here at the end of the year just to make sure you guys have them. So, excuse me. But listen, that's some things that we've talked about on this show numerous times over and over again. How do we make the games grow? How do we get people interested? How do we keep them supported? What that looks like. And I think you've really kind of drove home everything I've said in season 1 about how we do that. Again, the proof is in the pudding, man. You want, excuse me, if you want somebody to come out, invite them out. If they don't make that first one, it's okay. People are busy. Invite them to a second one. Invite them to a third one. Just keep on those people that you think are going to be a great part of this, and look at what it grows. The kid that was a senior, my first year coaching at the high school, is now leading a movement to try to get something started at the college level. That's insane to me. So I'm honored to know you, man. So congratulations to you. Congratulations to Michael. Big shout out to your buddy Michael up there. I know we were going to try to get him on as well because I wanted to hear his perspective. We'll have you guys back on, I'm sure of. But let's talk a little bit about the bigger picture. The future of the games. What do you think the Highland Games needs to do to attract younger athletes like yourself, like we've been talking about?
Honestly, I think the biggest thing would be the promotion of a juniors. I think knowing that it exists at a younger level, and that it's something that has an element of it that the youth can compete in could do huge things. I think that Blue River Games I was at, there were 4 youth in the juniors division, and most of them were kind of in those later teen years. I think a couple of them were 17, getting ready to be out of that juniors, and they were all part of the same throwing team and all knew each other in high school. And I think it's way too often that you're looking at it, and everybody who's gotten started in this sport has only gotten started in this sport because they knew somebody else close to them that was in the sport. It's like one big domino effect. I mean, even myself, I got started in this because I knew you and you were involved in this. It's not en masse kind of advertised at a way that the youth are finding this. I think I've talked to as many people as I could, both at the Blue River Highland Games and at that Southern Kentucky Highland Games, and there was one gentleman at the Blue River Highland Games who lived in the area, and he said that he was just trying this out for the first time. He ended up loving it, said he wants to come back and compete the next year, but that he really didn't know anything about the Highland Games, and that he saw in a Facebook group that this was going to be happening in Shelbyville, and was like, yeah, I'll go give it a try. But as far as the youth, like, and maybe it's just because of where I was in location, and there not being anything that real close to me in my community for a Highland Games to be like, all right, I'm going to go to this. Maybe it's as simple as just having them more often and in more places, but I didn't really know it was an option for me. And then every time I looked at it and saw something online or saw a video of something, I'm like, dang, that guy is huge. If I have to be that huge to compete, then I'm not going to be able to compete. And then naturally, I got a little bigger myself. I'm still not as big as some of these guys, but I'm big enough that I can kind of carry my weight a little, and at least try to remain competitive in a few of the events with some of the bigger guys. But I would have shocked me to learn there was a lightweight division. That this game is evolved as it is to kind of to kind of go to everyone and meet everyone where they are. And I think if the younger generation knows that this is a thing, and I think it is as simple as advertisement, if they know that this is a thing, I think more people will get involved.
I agree, man. I think social media, I think live streaming, I think building up the entertainment value of the games, I think all that's going to play a huge effect and push us into a whole new era of the sport, which is something that we're all trying to do, on our end as ADs, as athletes, people like myself. I'm not just involved in the athletic side. I'm also involved on the clan society side, the historical side, the educational side, and I think it's the holy trinity, right? It's the athletics, it's the clan societies, and it's the educational. That is historical educational part. I think that's just something that all has to work together to promote it, to look better online, to make sure people want to tune in. There's a lot of ups and downs to throwing. Being a high school thrower, you kind of know there's warm up, cool down, warm up, cool down. You get 3 throws, you sit down, you wait for the next event. And there's some of that in the Highland Games that your typical athlete or your typical spectator doesn't see, right? If we go to a football game, yeah, there's commercial timeouts, there's, intermissions and stuff like that. There's time for you to go to the snack stand or whatever, the concession stand. But the Highland Games is different. It's not a sprint. It is a marathon day. It normally starts at 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning, and it goes until 5 or 6 o'clock at night. It is a long day. So I guess, let me ask you this, man. What would you say to a high school thrower or maybe a college thrower or any younger person considering to try the Highland Games for the first time, but they just haven't jumped off the ledge yet?
Just do it. There's no room for cowardice. Don't go out there and hurt yourself, but you jump in to the deep end of the pool. If you don't like it, you don't got to continue. But you get out there, and I promise you, if you have an enjoyment of a throwing background and you get out there, you have a competitive spirit, but you also have a want to get better, and there really is a drive for that, you're going to love it. It's a fantastic culture. It's a fantastic set of events. Honestly, looking back on it in high school, I was always a little disappointed that we only offered 2 events. Now we get to jump into this, and there's 9 events that you get to spend your time working toward. you get real great in one thing, all right, it's time to pick it up in another. We're trying to average out, and even if you suck at one thing, you got 8 other events. That's what I told my buddy Michael in preparation. He got real concerned about a couple of the events at that first games, and he was like, "Man, I don't know how I'm gonna do in this for this reason." I'm like, dude, if you suck at one thing, it's unfortunate, but it just means you gotta put in a little work, get better at it. But you have 8 other events. Even if you don't do too hot in one, you got 8 more. Get out there and try it, and put in the work afterward. It's fantastic. I'd say just do it.
Okay, so what about yourself? Just jumping back personally, and we're gonna come back to this episode because I love you and your family. I'm big fans of all you guys, so you're gonna see me in 5 years. Where do you hope to be in this sport 5 years from now?
I want to be running with the A's. I want to be in with them, and I want them to know my name, and I want them to know that there is not going to be any first place given to anybody when I'm around. I don't expect to be the greatest athlete to ever grace the games, and I acknowledge that, but I want to be out there. I want to be competing. I want to look back on my numbers now and be like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe that there was a time that I was putting up numbers that low. I want to stay involved. I want this club at UC to take off. I want it to grow. I want there to be a dozens of people that through some way, shape, or form I have brought into the games.
Heck yeah, man. And I guess with you saying that, what event do you want to most work on to improve? Like which event do you want to master?
Oh my goodness, if I could get this wob down. Oh, I know there's a lot of lifting that needs to be done, a lot of form work that needs to be done, but I get it. I get that weight swinging, and it starts to move me, but on those times it doesn't. It feels good. It feels almost natural. I think outside of that, because Wob's going to have some limits for me. I think more short term, that lightweight for distance, I feel that I've got some power to put into that, and I just got to figure out how to do it. I'm trying to practice a double spin with it and trying to really get that thing out there. But I think that one is going to be next up on my priority list of I really need to start knocking this out of the park because I know I have the potential to do so.
Heck yeah, I believe you do. All right, so real quick, just for fun, of course, dream scenario, if the Highland Games explode nationally, what would that look like? What are you hoping that looks like in the next 5 years?
I want the next set of high schoolers, and I still stay in touch with a lot of the people I knew in high school. I'm not very far removed. I want those people that I know to be wanting to compete in the games. I want Highland Games to be common knowledge. I mean, I started a job this summer and I requested a Saturday off to go compete in the games, and when they asked why I was requesting off and I said what it was, they didn't know what it was at all. I went back that Monday following and showed some videos, and they were like, this is so cool, this is so impressive. And I think if we could make the Highland Games a household name, maybe some athletes become a household name, I think that would just be so wonderful for the sport. It's hard to put into words.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, man. I'm right there with you on that. So let's we're about to finish up, man. Let's just do some rapid fire some more fun questions because that one was pretty fun. Favorite Highland Game event so far?
I would say Braemar Stone.
Hardest
at that
event?
First games. Hardest event, it's gonna be Wob.
Here's my favorite, most painful event.
Also Wob. My back is not liking it.
Not at all. Do you have a favorite thrower so far that you follow?
In general or for Highland Games?
Give me either or both, whatever you want.
I would say in general, I love watching videos of Ryan Krauser. I always have. It's beyond impressive. And then for Highland Games, I don't know that I've got a single individual yet that I've just been hooked on, but I've been trying to watch videos of some people throughout. I'll pick a favorite. Next time you have me on here, I'll have one.
Okay, all right, perfect. Favorite pump up music before the games?
I listen to a metal band called Avatar before every meet, before every games, before every anything. My go-to start is I put it on "Hail the Apocalypse" by Avatar, and then I let it autofill and suggest from there.
Okay, and we might already know this one. Which one do you prefer, Caber or Wade Over Bar?
Probably gonna be Caber.
Yeah, we already know. Wob is the Wob for sure. All right, kilt tartan of choice.
I wear the Irish National. I've got a lot of family that goes back to it, but it's the first kilt I ever had, which was completely coincidental. It just matched the color and pattern of my high school mascot, and I got it and I love it. I'm real happy with it.
And best post game meal.
Got to be buffalo chicken of some sort, whether it's wings or a sandwich or a wrap, whatever. Just as spicy a chicken as I can find.
All right, and one word describing your first Highland Games.
Oh no, it's supposed to be rapid fire. Um, I would say exciting, but that's only because I'm struggling to come up with a word that enticing. I would say enticing.
Enticing. Okay, we can go with that.
You texted me, I think the day after, and said, "How sore are you? How you feeling? You want to do it again?" And I literally could not wait to get into the next Highland Games. Signed up for one that day for 2 weeks after. I again fell in love with it. Want to keep doing it.
Well, Mason, we are going to close on that. I cannot thank you enough for coming on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Mason Stroud, an engineering student, a former Floyd Central thrower, and one of the newest athletes stepping into the Highland Games world. And honestly, that conversation is exactly why the future of the games is exciting. Young athletes are discovering this culture, bringing new energy into it, and realizing the Highland Games don't have to stay stuck in the past to honor tradition. And a quick word from our sponsors who pay the bills. WolfgarConcealment.com, concealed carry classes, constitutional carry classes. We're in over 29 states. We also make custom Kydex holsters. You can find us at wolfgarconcealment.com. That is WOLFGAR concealment.com. We also partner with U.S. Law Shield, promo code Wolfgar. Get a 30-day free trial to have an attorney on retainer for any of your self-defense situations. They follow you from start to finish, whether it's the first court case or if they bring it back to court. Something that everybody out there who carries a firearm should have. WolfgarConcealment.com is the main sponsor for today's show. Now, quickly just coming out and talking about some follow-up games that are upcoming. Listen, guys, I'm about to show you how this should be done. I'm going to talk about a couple coming up, and maybe I need to start sending out emails with these examples ahead of time to the ADs to give them time to reach out to us, which is probably going to be the way to go. Coming up at the beginning of June, of course, everybody's Georgia Mountain Scottish Festival is going to be kicking off June 6th this weekend. New Jersey has a Ren Fair and Highland Games. Garrett County out in Maryland is going to have a Celtic Festival. Abe's Ancient Athletics is a premier Midwest Highland Games and Strength Expo that they're having out there in Springfield, Illinois. And then my birthday weekend. Yeah, buddy. There's going to be coming up a couple Carroll County, also in Maryland, and then there's going to be another one up in Munford, New York. And then, of course, the wild and wonderful West Virginia Celtic Festival. Love those guys and what they're trying to accomplish out there June 20th. Not to go unrecognized. Out in California, the California Celtic Festival is going on in Placenta, which is, I believe, northern Orange County, California, June 20th. So you can go and check those out. But real quick, we're going to cut to the clip on exactly how this should be done. Shout out to Danny Webster and KO for shooting promos for their upcoming games. And you watch that. And then right after that, we're going to get into a quick historical topic. Maybe not historical, cultural segment is what we'll call it for this show. So check this out, guys. You hang tight. Look at this. And then we'll be right back with you.
Hey everybody, I'm Danny Webster at Backyard Rebellion Highland Games. If you want to get in the Highland Games in the Southeast, go to my website at backyardrebellion.com. I run 12 games a year, all the way from Georgia to Louisiana to Tennessee to Florida. So go to my schedule. I got games coming up in September and October. We've got a couple games in the summertime coming up, but most of our registration's closed for those. But come on out to Clayton, Georgia, charity game for Place of Hope Children's Home at the end of September. Register for that at backyardrebellion.com. If you are in the Mississippi, Louisiana area, the very next weekend we'll be in West Monroe, Louisiana, and the weekend after that we'll be in Jackson, Mississippi. So go to the website, sign up, and I'd love to see you out there. New athletes are welcome.
Perfect.
All right, guys, I want to tell you about Eminence, Kentucky, September 20th, 19th, somewhere around there. It'll be on a Sunday. Amateur sign-ups, I'm going to have it up on my Facebook page very soon. You guys will just contact me. I can get you registered. It's a beautiful PR field. We do our Masters National Championship there on Saturday. Legends, you guys want to come out, help with that, come back on Sunday and throw. But I promise you, you are going to hit a PR on this field. Hope to see you there.
All right. Well, listen, I hope those games have got you excited. We have a great opportunity for the rest of 2026 to see more records fall, more new athletes take the field. And if you didn't get an invite to Masters Worlds, well, guess what? The next 6 months, it's time to lock in, get some of them late games under your belt, and get an invite next year, because there's always going to be a next year, another chance. Now, switching over to our cultural segment here, I definitely want to talk about something that's really near and dear to my heart. Two things. One, obviously, you guys have heard me talk about being a deputy commissioner, I guess is my technical title, for Clan Campbell. They have an awesome opportunity with the Clan Campbell Educational Foundation. But I have really been thinking about the differences from when I'm in Florida. I also have a spot in Florida, of the differences between Florida and the Ohio Valley. The Ohio Valley is where I grew up. I grew up in Kentucky. Kentucky is my old sweet home. And the lack of games. I've talked about it since day one, that I really wish we had more games and more opportunities and more festivals to get to. You know, within 2 hours in Florida, I can hit a few different games. I have my choice. And most of the time it's, 30 or 40 minutes away. It's not very far at all. In Kentucky, your closest game, or if let's say you live in the metro area, Louisville Metro, right? Your closest game is almost 2 hours away, right? Depending on where you live. Eminence, Kentucky isn't too far out, probably about 40 minutes to an hour, depending on traffic. The wonderful Southern Kentucky games that just competed for I believe their second year. They are replacing the Glasgow games, which was one of the oldest in the country that, just kind of faded away after COVID. That's about 2 hours away. You got Columbus, which is a little over an hour. You got Shelbyville, Indiana at the Blue River Highland Games. That's, up to 2 hours, hour and 40 minutes, 2 hours. Indianapolis is roughly the same amount. Like, when can we get more events, even if they're smaller, right? How about a Kaylee? How about a Kaylee or two, right? I don't want to get all dressed up just for a Burns dinner. Do I like some poetry? Of course, right? I'm a cultured individual. That's not why I want to get together. I want to get together for fellowship, to have fun. I want to hear about what's going on in your life. I want to hear about your next project. I want to hear how work's going. I want to hear all that good stuff. Why don't we have more events that's centered around the heritage that we share? Right? like an old German festival or a Polish festival. We have World Fest in Louisville, Kentucky, and I don't know how many people in kilts I see running around down there. Time to show people all about the haggis, right? So regardless, I have a couple opportunities here, and I'm really rolling around in my head on what to do now. On one side, it's not just about the education and the heritage and the connection. It's about growing the involvement of people in this area. I tell you what, I was still shocked. Southern Kentucky, I'm going to kind of pick on them because I just went this past weekend. You couldn't pick a cooler venue. It's ruins of an old bar tavern that burnt down before the Civil War. They started rebuilding it in stone. The Civil War started, and they couldn't finish building this tavern. The grounds looked great, and there were just a couple hundred people hanging around watching. There should have been 1,000 people there. There's enough people in Kentucky. It was a nice enough weekend. It did not rain like they thought it was going to rain. There should have been more. It's got to be more, right? Indianapolis. Last time I went there, no shade, love that. The athletic fields is perfect. The athletic director there, former, I guess they retired, were great. They ran a great games. Again, maybe only 100, 200 people watching in Indianapolis. Big opportunity there to get more people involved, right? So that's why I started thinking. I started thinking about why doesn't Louisville Metro, why doesn't Jeffersonville, Indiana, New Albany, Indiana? These are the big metropolitan areas. Why don't we see these Highland Games in big metropolitan areas like we do in Florida? And to be honest, you've heard my interview with KO. He's the godfather of Kentucky Highland Games because he's the only one doing the work. Excuse me, him and Mel. And I know they have a lot of other people doing work. But when I see a Highland Games, those are the two people that I see putting in the work for the Highland Games. Where's the structure? Where's the infrastructure that are helping them build that out? Kerry should have a games every weekend. He should be in Terre Haute, Indiana one weekend. He should be in New Albany in the spring. He should be in Jeffersonville in the fall. He should be on the Great Lawn in Louisville sometime, right? I've talked to the council member out in Valley Station, which is the southwest part of Jefferson County, Louisville. They'd like to host one out there. Why aren't we doing it more here? What is it going to take to build that here? And then I've talked to other clan commissioners all across the country. In California, in Florida, in Texas, in Oklahoma, they maybe even Michigan. They have fantastic organizations that are keeping that culture alive and pushing it forward. Why do we have so many dark spots? So spots that just aren't thriving, that aren't populated, right? This is why preserving Scottish heritage matters. It's building something that lasts. It's connecting not just athletics, it's connecting music. It's the Scottish clan societies, it's history, the education, getting the youth involved. How about all of us pulling together for some scholarships to help these kids out? Man, I got a senior that just graduated this year. I don't have a senior anymore. She's a college student now. Thank God she worked her tail off in high school, and she's actually enrolling into college as a sophomore. It's going to save me some money on the year-to-year there. That's 1 year down already. Why aren't we having more clinics? Why aren't we having this cultural preservation? How come the clan engagement is so low? Blue River Highland Games, love them to death. You will not find nicer folks. We only had 3 clan tents there. Shout out to Clan Gunn, Clan Stewart, and Clan Campbell. Right? And I just threw together something quick. I didn't even have the lovely setup like Clan Gunn or Clan Stewart. Where was everybody else at? Because I look at the voter rolls, I look at the people out there, I meet people all the time, and that's a Scottish name. It's everywhere. They built this region. Heck, they built a lot of America, right? You go look into Kentucky, they got 120 different counties, and 118 of them are named after Scots. why is it so hard to build in Kentucky? Now, I will give a shout out to Central Kentucky. There were 6 tents, 6 clan tents, and that was a huge improvement over what I've seen. You go to Central Florida Highland Games, and there's going to be 30 tents. There's going to be 3 or 4 rolls of clans out there. And the clan tent's just not a 10 by 10. They're taking up a 20 by 30 or a 20 by 20, right? So, again, I'm not knocking anybody. I'm just saying, how do we get that engagement here? And I thought maybe we start it. Maybe we start doing something that's going to help build everything else. And that's where the idea of the Ohio Valley Scottish Heritage Foundation launched. Now, are we going to support athletics? Of course. Are we going to look at doing strongman stuff? Of course. Who wouldn't want to lift some stones, right? We don't have any stones to lift here in the region. You know, the boys over at Iron Palace, they're doing stone lifting competitions. I want that for this region, right? I want to see, somebody have something like the Denny Stones over in Scotland over here. There's a stone tour you can take in Scotland where you just go place to place and you lift up these stones as just a sign of strength. One of them is, golly, the name just slips off my tongue here. I can't even think of it. You got to go into an old lady's backyard. You got to knock on the door and say, hey, can I go in the backyard and lift that stone? Right? Because that's how long it's been there. Somebody lives there already. So that's where this idea came from. It was like, hey, how do we build it here? What are we going to do right here to build that? It's got to be done, right? And let's focus on engagement first, right? Let's get more clan societies involved. Let's get more people involved in their genealogy. Let's get more people interested in how, again, just using Indiana as an idea, how Indiana was put together, who founded what county, who did what where, Illinois, right? The Midwest, Kansas, whatever it may be. These towns that could use a little bit more engagement. Let's start there. Get the youth involved. Seen it at Blue River where they invited out some of the high school throwers. That's what I'm doing. I'm inviting my high school throwers out to go throw. We should have a huge juniors clinic, and bring these folks that aren't going to college to throw. Like you heard Mason talk about. He didn't go to University of Cincinnati to throw. He went there to become an engineer. Right? Good on him. But he still missed throwing. There's tens of thousands of people out there that could support athletics in their 20s that would probably be really good and help grow this sport even more. So, again, that's my idea. I'm not sure. I've been talking with a few folks. I love our Clan Campbell Educational Foundation, and I'm probably saying that one wrong. I'll have to look that up later and tag that. They have some awesome missions. I'm talking with a few folks, all around the country about the Ohio Valley Scottish Heritage Foundation, what that would look like. If you look at a map and a blueprint, that's going to be parts of Kentucky, Indiana, Ohio, a piece of Pennsylvania, a piece of West Virginia. That Ohio Valley region is pretty large, and there's not a lot going on for Scottish heritage, for the Scottish culture, for engagement in that region. And I think, if I could do something to help that, then I'll do that. Now, if I were to build something like this, again, it's got to be something that can survive without me, because again, I'm 42. I turn 43 here by the next episode that airs. I'll be 43. So it's something that I think about. I don't want my name on it. I just want to do some of the legwork to get it going so everybody else can take it and go from there. So, you've heard us talk quite a bit today, about how things live, even though we're not involved, how things are going to last for a lot longer than us. The test of time, the Scottish culture will be there. But how do we make it grow? How do we make it more fun? I asked my daughter, after the Southern Kentucky games. It's like, well, what? She's 13. I was like, well, what'll make this more fun for you? And kids your age. Are we asking those questions? Hell, I don't know. Anyways, guys, I appreciate you listening to all my ramblings. How fun was that, right? So, just kind of getting here for the closeout segment, of course, of Rally the Tartans season 2. This was just a big opportunity for me to talk about the games moving forward. Obviously, from the throwing circle in high school to the Highland Games field and bringing those kids in like we did with Mason. How awesome was that? Great stuff there. And, talking about just the heritage, how we get more people involved. So, again, we got some great upcoming games. Thank you to KO and Danny for the snippets. For their future games. If you're an athletic director listening to this and you made it to the end, thank you very much. Make sure you send me those videos. Let's get those videos involved. Let's get those voices. Let's let people know who you are, because you deserve a lot of credit for being an athletic director in the Highland Games. Let me highlight your story. Let me highlight your games. We do have some great upcoming guests coming up for the next 2 episodes, and I'm just going to drop those so we can start building a little bit of excitement. We will be having Clay Buchanan, the Clan Buchanan throwing team. That is a specific branch of Clan Buchanan who focuses on their throwers, making sure throwers are engaged, have what they need to compete, have a great time out there, are safe, and bring more people into it. I think every clan out there should have a throwing team, or a specific group that nurtures those throwers, right? We're going to be jumping across the pond and talking with Mr. Mark McCollum, who is a defensive coordinator for an American football team in Scotland. How cool is that, guys? We sit here and we do the sports of Scotland, and now we are going to be listening to one of these guys talk about American football over there. If that's not cool to you, I get it. It's cool to me because I'm a defensive coordinator for a local high school football team whose mascot happens to be the Highlanders. Go Highlanders. So, just want to make a big shout out to all the faithful, all my family, my wife and kids, for putting up with my craziness, going through all this. We just can't thank you guys enough for the support. And for anybody that wants to get on the show that hasn't got an invite, reach out to me. I will find a place for you. We are going to get this off the ground again, make it better, make it more entertaining, and make sure that this show lasts for a really long time. So I appreciate you. Again, the show just isn't about throwing things. It's about carrying that culture forward, and we can't wait to hear from you. Let me know how we did. You guys have a good one.